Hello, it's Stacy from Watercolor Together, and today we're going to talk about paints. I posted a video yesterday all about basic supplies for a beginner and with an emphasis on quality over quantity. So I'll link that in the description, and then if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check it out because it has some good information about what supplies you can add to your kit, what you really need to get started, and this is geared for a beginner. So it's just a nice overview. I think it can be overwhelming with the number of things that are available online, and there are also so many phenomenally good reviews, and then once you start going down that rabbit hole of reviews, you're not sure what you really need and what you don't need. And so I wanted to make it simple and just provide a list of high quality supplies that you can use to get you started. The thing that we're going to do today is to look at paint colors. So I have my favorite palette here. It is mostly Daniel Smith and Rembrandt colors, and so I'm going to go through. I keep a palette of 24. 24 is all I need. I'm not a paint collector so much. I know there are people who collect like every version of yellow, every version of pink, green, whatever. I'm not like that. I do like to stick to the basics. If I'm going to splurge on something, it's going to be a lot of paper because I feel like I go through it and I don't want to feel guilty about making a lot of paintings. And so that's the thing I splurge on. I buy a lot of paper. But I just wanted to share with you what 24 colors I keep in my palette so that if you are going to follow along with these tutorials that you can set up a palette for yourself. And then the other thing is that I know that buying 24 tubes of paint all at once can be not everybody wants to do that or has a budget to do that. So I have a chart here and it goes through, if I could only purchase 9 tubes of paint, which 9 would they be? And then adding 3 until we get to 18. So a palette of 9, a palette of 12, 15, and 18. And then of course I'll share my 24 colors. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to swatch them out so you can see them and then just talk a little bit about why each one of those is in my palette. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so as I said, I have swapped some colors in and out over the last 3 years to come up with the palette that I like to use. I can paint anything I need to paint using just these 24 colors. And in order to make it easy to start collecting paint, we're going to go through, I've got a chart here. I actually made this chart 3 or 4 times because I kept rearranging it, trying to think about, okay, if I could only have 9 paints, which 9 paints would I really feel like I needed in my palette? Which are the 9 that I couldn't live without? And so one of the things that's important to understand, and we're going to go in this, if you join me for this series, this beginner painting series, we're going to talk a lot about the color wheel and color temperature and color mixing and color theory and things like that because it's a huge part of watercolor. So we're just going to do a quick overview of that. If you don't have a color wheel, please get one. They're so helpful. I have done some deep dives into color theory and where it started. It's very fascinating, and I think I might do a whole video just on color theory because I have always liked that aspect. Actually, not just in paint, but when I worked in sewing and design, graphic arts, color theory is always in play. So, but for the purposes of this, what we're going to talk about is warm and cool colors. And there's kind of a lot of argument behind this because it is a theory. So we're going to just go with kind of the accepted and standard idea, and there are always exceptions. And this is a guide. They're not hard, fast rules. Feel free to break rules. That's part of what art and creativity is all about. But for what we're looking at right now, we're going to think about the yellow at the top and the violet at the bottom. And everything on this side of the wheel would be considered cool, and everything on this side of the wheel is going to be considered warm. Now, where it gets tricky is that within that, there are warm and cool colors or hues of each color. So the easiest place to see that is probably in the yellows. My mid yellow, the one that sits sort of in the middle, not really warm, not really cool, is going to be my, this is a Rembrandt color, and it's Azo Yellow Medium. Now my cool yellow, because it leans to this side of the wheel and it has greens in it, is my lemon yellow. So this is my cool yellow. It has some green undertones. And then my warm yellow is going to be this yellow, which is Cadmium Yellow Deep, because there's a lot more orange tones underneath of that. So it leans to this side. It's this yellow-orange color, right? And so that's how we're going to look at all of our colors. Same thing for reds. I've got my medium red here, which is permanent red. This is a pretty pure kind of fire engine red. I have Vermilion, which is a very warm red. It's almost orange. And then I have Carmine red, which is has a lot of blue undertones. So this is my cool red, this is my warm red, and this is my sort of neutral or in the middle red. And all colors have that, including blue, and even in greens. When we look at green, if they have blue undertones, it's a cool blue, and if it has yellow undertones, it's going to be a warm yellow, or I'm sorry, green, a warm green. And same thing for blues. This has a lot of green undertones. This is phthalo blue green shade, and so this would be considered a very cool blue. And then this is French ultramarine, which is my most in the middle color. And then this is phthalo blue red shade, which leans to the purpley side, so that's going to be considered a cool. Now my French ultramarine is a little on the cooler side. If you had a true ultramarine instead of the French ultramarine, there's a little less of those kind of purpley undertones in it, but I just love this color. So I consider this one kind of neutral in the middle. All right, so I'm going to put this to the side and just keep it. So the reason that this is important, this cool versus warm business, and if that feels really confusing to you, that's okay. It is really confusing in the beginning, but we're going to talk about this a lot through the series, and hopefully by the end of the series, it'll be clear and you'll have a good understanding, is that it really changes how things mix together. So when you use a cool red with a cool blue, you're going to get these beautiful clear purples. But if you use a really warm red with a cool blue, you're going to get muddy mixes. And sometimes you want a muddy mix. Sometimes you want something that's really neutralized, or you want something that has a lot of brown undertones. But sometimes you don't. And so if you understand that temperature within these different hues, then it will make your mixing easier to do. Okay. So I'm going to put this to the side, and so that is my guiding principle on choosing my 9 colors, is I need warm and cool versions of each of the colors so that I have more options for mixing. So, and even you could break this down. If I were going to only buy 3 tubes of paint to start with, these would be the 3. And, well, I would maybe need 4. And I'll explain why in a second. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my Vermilion because that is the first one. And, okay, and I'm gonna, you know what, I need just a little more water. Sorry, hang on guys. Or just a little more pigment. I want a nicer mix there. All right, and what I'm going to do is just fill in a nice, I'm going to kind of quickly swatch these out. And then I want to go in and at the top of this, I want to charge it in. Oh my gosh, I'm having trouble standing here because my dog is laying on my feet. She likes to be very close to me all the time. Either she's next to me or she's barking at the window, which you have all heard, trying to let me know that there's something that could be dangerous to me, like a squirrel or chipmunk. All right, so the next color, this Vermilion is by Rembrandt, but I think Daniel Smith also has a Vermilion. And it leans very, very orange. It's a pretty strong color. It mixes to make beautiful like peaches and oranges, and it adds a really warm hue to painting. So I really like Vermilion and I use it often. The next color here is Azo Yellow Medium. This is by far my very favorite yellow. I think I don't have quite enough water in my brush. So I think the thing about Azo Yellow Medium is that it is a Rembrandt color, and my little art store doesn't carry Rembrandt anymore. And most of these colors I would be okay to switch out to Daniel Smith so that I could buy locally. This is going to be the exception. I love this color so much that I think that I would have to order it. And I thought that they weren't going to make this color anymore. I would probably order many tubes of it so that I have a lifetime supply, because this is my very favorite yellow and it is in so many of my paintings. I just love working with it. Now I think on the Daniel Smith side of things, I think there's like the Hansa yellows is probably maybe the replacement for this, I don't know. But this particular Rembrandt Azul Yellow Medium is an all-time favorite color. So if I could only have, like I'm looking at this, if I could have 9 tubes, this would be the 9. But if I could only have 4 tubes, because I think I could get away with painting with just 4 tubes, it would be these 3 plus this one. Okay, so this next color is French Ultramarine. French Ultramarine is my very favorite blue. I use it all the time. You can see that in my tutorials. I think, again, like Azul Yellow Medium and French Ultramarine show up again and again and again. I love how granulating it is. It is a little hard to mix sometimes because it tends to get lost, or other pigments tend to dominate it, so you do have to work your mixes pretty well, and it can be a little washed out sometimes. And so I have to work to get a really full pigment load. It's also super transparent, so that might be part of it, I'm not sure. But it is just so beautiful, and it sort of separates. It's really granulating. That's one of my favorite aspects of this paint. And so like when you mix it to make greens, you get these little bits of blue pigment that separate out from the green mix and settle in, and it just creates a lot of extra texture. So that's why I love this, and I also love the color. It makes just some beautiful mixes. So French Ultramarine, this would be in my palette no matter what. Okay, and then the next one that we're going to paint out is another favorite. I use it all the time, and I could use this, I think, instead of a red. I make a lot of mixes with this, and that is Quinacridone Rose. This particular Quinacridone Rose is a Daniel Smith color, and it's beautiful. It paints really well. It's really easy to, mix. It's a great mixing color because it's so cool. And so I end up with beautiful colors when I use this. In terms of like, it makes peaches and like oranges. I can mix my Quinacridone Rose and my Vermilion and get a really nice deep red that has warm shades. These play really well together. And then when I mix my Quin Rose and my Azul Yellow Medium, it makes beautiful oranges. And when I mix my Quin Rose with my French Ultramarine, I get beautiful purples. And if you use more French Ultramarine and just a touch of Quin Rose, it's an unbelievably pretty periwinkle that works very well for skies. So, and then these 3 colors, when you mix them together, make a really nice gray. So if I were only going to buy 4 tubes of paint, these would be the 4. I would have a hard time if I only had 4 tubes of paint, but those would be it. And so that's kind of how I've laid this out in order of the ones that I feel like I would need the most. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna paint out is this lemon yellow. This is a Daniel Smith color, and it's a really bright, vivid, nice lemon yellow. And it is there's a lot more green undertones to my lemon yellow than there is to my Azul Yellow Medium. Azul Yellow Medium sits more in the middle, and this has like but it's also super transparent, which is really nice. So like if you're painting a painting and you want to have like everything be really sunlit, you can use this as sort of an underwash and then build layers over the top of that, and it looks like it's just luminous and that the leaves are just glowing. So this is a really nice color for that. It also mixes beautiful greens with French Ultramarine, and then our next shade, which we're going to paint out in a moment. Okay, so that's lemon yellow, and this particular is paint is Daniel Smith. Before I had the Daniel Smith one, I had the Van Gogh lemon yellow, which was also really nice. So I don't know the specific names if you were going to purchase the Van Gogh tubes or even a different brand. I know there are a lot of people who like a lot of different brands of paint. Then I'm not, but you could look at the swatches and then find an equivalent. Okay, so the next color is a Rembrandt color. No, actually, no, it's a Daniel Smith color. I think I had a Rembrandt version of this and I didn't love it, so I bought it in Daniel Smith. And so this is just a really heavy pigment load. It is really nice to work for. It's really easy or really nice to work with. And it's really easy to paint out. It makes great mixes. And so this is the Phthalo Blue Green shade. You can see that it has all that beautiful green in there. And I can get really deep colors with this. You can charge in these beautifully dark colors. And this, And the lemon yellow mix really well together. Phthalo blue green shade mixes really well with azo yellow medium as well. All right, and now in this row, I have burnt sienna, because burnt sienna is sort of a classic color. It mixes very, very well with French ultramarine. You can make beautiful neutrals. You can add burnt sienna into azo yellow medium and get a really beautiful golden color. You can tone down, or you can tone down colors with it. I really, really like burnt sienna. And then the other two are what would be considered convenience colors. And the reason they're convenience colors, or they're called that, is because we could mix these. This is permanent blue violet, and so I could mix my own purples up using Quin Rose and French Ultramarine, or Quin Rose and Phthalo blue green shade. But so it isn't, you don't have to have this in your palette. But when you're first starting, getting those mixes can be really hard. And so I feel like if you have a couple of convenience colors that are already pre-mixed for you, it just makes your painting process go a little more smoothly. All right, so this is Rembrandt's Permanent Blue Violet. I think another purple that's really nice is, I think it's called Dioxine Purple, that's made by a couple of different companies. But I have the Rembrandt version of this Permanent Blue Violet, and I really like it. Kind of almost like an in-the-middle purple. It's not too red, it's not too blue. And I think what's nice about that is I can push it one way or the other using these other colors. So I can pump in French Ultramarine and get like this really beautiful kind of inky blue. And if I use more Permanent Blue Violet, then I just get like a really dark blue purple. And then Quin Rose and Permanent Blue Violet make these really beautiful, like violet, like really vivid red, plummy violet colors. Okay, let's charge in some darker. And then one surprising thing about, I use Permanent Blue Violet in shadows a lot. If I don't want the shadows to get too cool, then sometimes I use Permanent Blue Violet instead. And it also is across the color wheel from yellow. So if I want to make like a neutralized version of yellow, I can add that in. It helps to tone down greens if I want to have more olive green. So this is a really useful color to have. All right, so the next one that I have here is burnt sienna. And the burnt sienna that I have is a Rembrandt color. It is a little hard to build up. It's really, really transparent, so sometimes it can be hard to build up enough color, and I have to mess with it a bit to really, if I need a really deep version, either I have to glaze multiple layers, or if I'm mixing with this, it can get lost. So I have to be careful about how much of the other color I add so that it doesn't get washed out. But it's such a nice hue, and it plays really well with the other colors here. Burnt sienna and Permanent Blue Violet make the most beautiful dark brown. It was kind of a surprise for me that the two colors would combine so well, but they do, and so I use that combination quite a bit. It actually makes for great tree trunks, but also good shadows everywhere. Okay, but you can see, like, you see my brush strokes. This is the color, I would say, is a teeny bit hard to work with. I like it anyway, but I just have to know that I have to be careful about not overworking it. I have to be careful about not overpowering it with other colors. Okay, so, and the last in this first set of 9, if you are only going to buy 9 tubes of paint, is sap green. This is my favorite green. And it's my favorite green because it, and again, we could mix this up. It's not hard to mix up a sap green, but it's really nice to be able to just grab it on your palette and not have to worry about mixing it up. Just being able to grab it and use it straight out of the palette. And if I want to shift this to a more blue-green, I can add in either one of my blues. I can add in my yellows. I can add in a bit of burnt sienna. Burnt sienna and sap green make some beautiful colors. I can add in a bit of blue-violet, does some interesting things. And so this palette of 9, you can make so many colors. There's a lot you can do. Even though you have a limited number of tubes of paint here that you would be purchasing, your number of mixes is pretty great. And so before I go further, I painted this out earlier. This is a color chart, and let me push it the right way. And what this shows is all of the mixes that you can make with these 9 colors. And so I started up here with the Vermilion, and then Quinacridone Rose, Permanent Blue Violet, Azo Yellow Medium, Lemon Yellow, Burnt Sienna, French Ultramarine. This is Phthalo Blue Green shade, and Sap Green. And if you want to see how it mixes with any other color, this is a chart for that. So I can see that when I take my Vermilion and I mix it with my Permanent Blue Violet, this is the color I get. And this side shows me what it is at like like a stronger strength where I'm using more pigment, and then this shows what a really soft wash looks like. And so you can see, like, look at all of these greens are beautiful. And so French Ultramarine mixed with Azo Yellow Medium makes this green. French Ultramarine mixed with Lemon Yellow makes this green. French Ultramarine and Burnt Sienna make a beautiful Payne's Gray. That is how Payne's Gray is made. So, so you don't have to have Payne's Gray on your palette. You can mix these 2 colors to get your own Payne's Gray. And then remember when I said this made some really nice mixes? Look at all of these beautiful mixes from the Permanent Blue Violet. This is with Azo Yellow Medium. We've got it mixed with Lemon Yellow. Yeah, and well, on the road. So anyway, and so this chart is just really nice for being able to see all the colors that you can make using just these 9. Yeah, and so you have a lot of choices here with just 9 tubes of paint. Okay, so moving on, if you were going to purchase 12 tubes, or maybe you buy your first 9 and then you're going to add 12 later, the next 3 that I would want to include in my palette is Carmine Red. And the Carmine Red that I have is a Rembrandt color. This is a really nice, my paints are starting to dry a little. I need to probably re-wet them because I'm talking. So this is Carmine Red, and it's got a really nice, cool undertones. So I'm going to paint that out right here. And let's charge in some extra color up at the top here, just so you can see. Okay, and then the next color that I would have on my palette is Quin Gold. I really like Quin. Now you can mix Quin Gold by mixing Burnt Sienna with Azo Yellow Medium. You can get pretty close to Quin Gold, but it is a color that I use all the time, and I mix it in with my greens a lot because I can get these really beautiful kind of off greens. Like when you're painting a landscape, you don't see landscapes where this is a kind of green that you have. It's a lot of these kind of off greens that you're seeing, and so in order to get those, you have to mix other colors that are going to kind of neutralize it in. So Quin Gold makes for great green mixes because it's got a lot of kind of orange undertones. And this is a Daniel Smith color. I think that you'll find that a lot of people who paint with Daniel Smith paints have this on their palette because it is just a really beautiful color to work with. Okay, so the next color is Cerulean Blue, and this paint is one of the Van Gogh paints that I have. It's the last Van Gogh paint that I have in my palette, and when I run out of it, I'll replace it with a Daniel Smith version. It is a pretty good quality paint. It's a little chalky, not something that you're probably going to notice, but if you have it next to some higher quality paints, you might see that a little bit more. I think if you're using them on their own, like those Van Gogh paints are a really good set to start with. All right, let's charge in some darker colors, some darker cerulean here. Okay, so this would be my set of 12 tubes if I were only going to paint with 12 tubes of paint in my palette. Like if I had only 12 wells, this is what would go in them. Okay, so next let's move over to the next 3 tubes to make a palette of 15, and I'm going to add in Payne's Gray. And Payne's Gray is something that you can make with French Ultramarine and Burnt Sienna pretty easily, but it can take a little work to make that mix, and sometimes you just don't want to have that hassle. You just want to be able to grab it from your palette. And the other thing is that sometimes it can be difficult to get as deep as you want. Like, you have to really work to pull out enough burnt sienna and enough French ultramarine to get those really deep Payne's gray. And so this, by pulling it from the well, this gets really nice and dark. This particular Payne's gray is a Rembrandt color, and I really like it. It's a little granulating, but also it gets incredibly dark. And I think, you know, it's pretty neutral in terms of gray. I feel like it doesn't have, some grays have, and some Payne's grays specifically, I think, are really blue. There's a slight blue undertone, but I think that it is pretty neutral in terms of Payne's gray. So I really like this particular one, and that's the Rembrandt Payne's gray. All right, so the next paint, this is one that I don't see people talk about very often, and it's on my palette. I love it, and I love it enough to include it in my 15 faves, and that's raw sienna. And I think, I have a little much water here, but that's okay. All right, so I think the thing is that it's this really soft color, and it works really well for landscapes. It makes some beautiful sand if you're working on a seascape, and it can. You can't really build it up. It's never going to be a super dark color, but it works really well to mix in with, like, if you want these really soft washes. If you have a part of your painting that's going to be very kind of luminescent and you want to preserve this really light and airy feeling, raw sienna is great, and you can mix it in with some other colors. You can mix it in with even sap green. It mixes really well with quin rose and vermilion, and so I use this quite a bit. And actually, raw sienna and permanent blue violet make beautiful colors together. So I really, this is a paint that I love having on my palette. And I think, I know there are people that really like buff titanium, like YouTubers I've seen talk a lot about buff titanium. I think buff titanium is kind of opaque, and so for me, it wouldn't be something that I would include. I like this raw sienna. Okay, and then the next one is another blue, which is cobalt blue. And cobalt blue is this really, it's a little granulating. It makes for beautiful skies. It mixes really well with quin rose to make some soft purples and violets, and if you're like doing floral pieces, it's really nice for that. So you can see, look at how when you paint, this is a Daniel Smith color. Do you see how when you paint that out, I don't know if the camera's catching that or not, but it's just like really granulating, and there's a lot of texture in there, and it's just a really pretty blue. And it's definitely different, like, you know, all four of these blues really have their own characteristics, and so that's why having a lot of blues on your palette are great, because then when you start mixing them with other colors, you're going to get individual and unique greens and purples, and you can make grays by putting 3 primaries together. So that's where this cobalt is really nice. I just feel like you could have a lot. If I, like my 24, I have a lot of blues. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blues, and then I have a 6th that is a green, but it's really a blue. It's like, it's got a lot of blue undertones, and then Payne's gray, which is kind of a blue base. So I really have dedicated a lot of space in my palette to blues, and the same is true of yellows. I have, you know, these yellows, and then I have a lot of space dedicated to, well, 3 wells to, but I consider magenta part of the red family. Okay, so on my last, I don't paint with a ton of reds, but I know that a lot of people do. Sometimes they're used, I think if you do a lot of urban paintings, you end up with some really bright reds. So I included this in here. I have it in my palette. I like having it in my palette, but I have this kind of, you know, towards this last 18 set of colors, rather than putting it at the beginning. And part of it is that my Carmine and my Vermilion, if I mix them together, I can get a pretty close kind of fire engine-y red. And so I think when I purchased this and put it in my palette, I thought I was going to maybe use it a little bit more than I do. It's not that I never use it. I do use it sometimes, but it's not what I use all the time. I'm sorry, I have a little more water here that I need. I think I probably needed, I chose my size 5 brush, and I probably needed to choose my size 6. But once we get into it this far, I'm not going to swap around. Okay. I actually figured that out after the first or second swatch. I'm like, ooh, I think my brush is too small. But, I don't know, this is the one I have out. So we're making it work. All right, so then the next color here is another one of the primaries. This is Cadmium Yellow Deep. Now the thing about Cadmium Yellow Deep, this is a Rembrandt color. I should say this Permanent Red was a Daniel Smith. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. So the Cadmium Yellow Deep is a really, really nice color. It is this beautiful, deep, orangey yellow. And this mixes up some gorgeous greens. So I really love having it on my palette. However, cadmium does have some issues with being, it's a little dark. Cadmium has some issues with being toxic. And so I just need to make sure I put that disclaimer out there. I don't do anything like lick my brushes to, I don't know who would, but I think people do sometimes, like lick the tip of their brush to make it pointier. I do not do that. So, and you definitely wouldn't want to. You wouldn't want this to be on any of your, you wouldn't want this ever to be coming in contact with your mouth. So use it carefully. I don't have young kids in my house either, so I don't have to worry about young kids or anything like that getting into my paints. But if I know there are alternatives to Cadmium Yellow Deep if you don't want to have cadmium in your palette. Okay, and the last one for this selection of 18 colors is Phthalo Green Blue Shade. So this is really my second green that I have in this selection of colors. I have a third green on my palette, and I can share with you why in a moment. But this is kind of in between. It's not really a green, it's not really a blue. It's, I mean, it is green, but it's got so much blue undertone. And what I love about this, I hardly ever use it straight out of, right out of the palette, but I use it for mixing. And so I mix it into my other blues to get some gorgeous turquoise colors. And the other thing is that Phthalo Green Blue Shade and Quinacridone Rose, when they're mixed together, make some phenomenal grays. They make the prettiest, softest gray, which is hard to imagine, right? Like this is such a bright color and this is such a bright color, so it's hard to imagine that when you put them together, you'd get a gray, but you do. It's kind of amazing. And I know there are people that would use, like, there's another color that artists would choose would be Vermilion, which would be an alternative to this. You could put, because Vermilion is a very blue leaning green, but I just really like the Phthalo Green Blue Shade. This is a Daniel Smith color, and it's so pigmented. It has a really heavy pigment load, and it is really easy to work with, so I enjoy having that. All right, so those are my 18. But really divided up, like if you're going to start with your first 9 tubes, this is what I would recommend. This is what I would like. You may find out that you would like a different set of colors completely after you're doing some painting for a while. But these are just my recommendations. So I always say, like, take that with a grain of salt, explore and experiment and figure out what your favorite 9 colors are. And then this is going to be my favorite 12, my favorite 15, and my favorite 18. And then I wanted to show one more thing. One of the things, like, we're looking at this color mixing chart, and this is really just kind of equal parts of one color or the other. So equal parts Vermilion and Quinacridone Rose will give me this really nice kind of centered red, right? But one of the ways that we can play with color is to look at it in this way, which is I took my Quinacridone Gold on this side, and I took my Phthalo Blue Green shade on this side, and then I just slowly mixed in more and more Quinacridone Gold until I got all the way over here, where there's only just a very slightest tint left of the Phthalo Blue Green shade, and it's mostly Quinacridone Gold. And so you can see how you can take those two colors and get such a range of in between. So anyway, I just wanted to demonstrate that, and we're going to talk a lot about the color wheel, a lot about color mixing. I really enjoy that aspect of watercolor paints, but I just wanted to share today, if you're trying to make some paint tube selections, that this would be my recommendation. These would be my recommendations. Oh, and then the other thing is, let's talk about, so this is a set of 18 paints, right, and kind of divided up so that it wouldn't be overwhelming if you just want to start collecting a few tubes. But these are my 24 favorites. And so the ones that have been left out of here, this is a Daniel Smith Burnt Umber. Now you can make a burnt umber by mixing Payne's Gray and burnt sienna. You can come pretty close to it, but it's nice to have it right out of the well. So I do use that. This is a Daniel Smith Quinacridone Violet, and so this is a really pretty and kind of brilliant color. This is Cadmium Orange, and this is a really nice orange. If I were going to pull something out of my palette altogether, it would probably be this, because I don't use it very often. If I need an orange, I'm usually mixing it. I'm usually mixing actually my Azure Yellow Medium and my Vermilion to make my own orange. I think colors can be a little bit more dynamic when you mix them versus pulling them out of the pan like that. So anyway, if I decided I had to have another color, this would be the one that I would, pull out. All right, and then the other color we didn't talk about is this one, and this is made by Daniel Smith. It's called Indian Red, and it's got this really cool granulating effect, so I like using that in, it's a great color for landscapes. And then, let's see, I also didn't include this blue, which is Phthalo Blue Red shade. I tend to use my French Ultramarine more. I don't dip into this that often. It is a really nice color. I just prefer the granulating effect that happens with French Ultramarine. And then another color here is, this is a Daniel Smith color, and this is part of their, I think it's their Primatech line, which I don't want to overwhelm. But they carry some paints that are made with natural minerals, and so they're really granulating, and they do some really kind of cool separation on your paper. And they make for some really interesting mixes. So this is Green Apatite Genuine. So I think that's it. So those are the remaining colors that were not part of this set that we just swatched out. All right, well, I can't wait until we meet again for our first real lesson for an absolute beginner. I'm really excited, and so that video should drop sometime later this week. I'm not exactly sure on the date. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you hadn't. That's really helpful to me. And if you liked the content, give me a like. That is also helpful. It helps other people find the videos. And then the other thing is, if you have any suggestions or feedback, I always welcome that. I'll leave it in the comments below. All right, thanks so much.